Autism diagnosis rates have skyrocketed. Scientists still aren't sure what causes autism, but parents and activists have invented some pretty crazy ideas. Television, allergies, antibiotics, GMOs, cell phones, gluten, and of course, life-saving vaccines. But in the scramble to explain the autism epidemic, we've forgotten one important fact. Autism is not actually on the rise.
One advocate calls this a national epidemic in need of a national plan.
More kids than ever before are being diagnosed with autism spectrum disorders.
There is a huge autism tsunami that is going to hit the state budget if they don't take steps to ensure that the kids are getting treatment.
Autism was virtually unheard of back in 1975, when the diagnosis rate was something like 1 in 5,000. But by 2002, that number had jumped to 1 in 150. Right now, it's closer to 1 in 68. Now that looks a lot like an autism epidemic until you really dive into the numbers. Scientists recently mapped out the number of children diagnosed with autism between 2000 and 2010 and found the telltale signs of an epidemic. Rates of diagnosis had increased by a factor of 5. But then they also found something strange. Even as the autism rates went up, the number of children enrolled in special education programs remained virtually the same for 10 years. Where were all the autistic children going? If there's an autism epidemic and a 5-fold increase in autism cases since the year 2000, why don't we have significantly more children enrolled in special education? Back in 1975, physicians diagnosed thousands of children every year with intellectual disabilities or learning disabilities, even though they weren't exactly sure what was wrong with them. Those children entered the special education system just like any other child with a severe psychiatric diagnosis. Later, as we began to learn more about autism, those children who were once called intellectually disabled were slowly being diagnosed as autistic. In other words, we always had this many autistic people in the United States. We just didn't call it autism. And now that we have a better understanding of autism, we diagnose it more often. There is no autism epidemic. Higher rates of autism diagnosis are largely due to a shift in classification, not gluten or vaccines. And if anyone tells you otherwise, that's junk science.